it's all about selling the vision and what's possible.
Right.
And some people are there, some people understand that, some people are not. We're a B2B service company, and you've got to have a product to sell into it, so you've got to build that to start with.
Yes.
I'm yet to find many entrepreneurs or startups that really love going out to raise money. Trying to gauge where somebody is in that journey within the first sort of 30 seconds of meeting them when you're going to pitch, I think is the most critical thing anybody that's pitching can do.
Well, welcome, Ben. It's great to see you again.
Beth, really good to see you.
Yeah, and I would love it if you could tell me about your company.
Yep.
And how we got the idea, how it started, and your role, etc.
So you want all the gritty details?
Yes,
So
I
give
do.
you all the gritty details.
That's right.
Okay, so my company's called Powered Now, as you know, and we founded it in 2012, 2013, and it kind of came out of the business we were doing previously. We were working in e-commerce, and great business. It was doing very well, but it was a bit boring, if we're brutally honest. It was kind of very repeatable, scalable sort of business, and we wanted to sort of shake things up a bit. So we did quite a lot of research. We're looking into different areas where we could apply some of the e-commerce model to. And we couldn't really find anything, to be honest. But then we realised we knew a lot about the payments industry. And this was this would have been about 2010, actually, when we was doing our research. And the payments industry then was a bit of a wild west, to be honest. You have companies like PayPal that are trying to get from the online space offline. You have companies like iZettle, which was really in its infancy. And we thought, oh, that's interesting. So we went and spoke to lots of those companies. And every single time we were doing our research, we kept coming across trades companies or service companies for our friends in the States. So these are companies which are generally out and about. They're in your home, they're in your business. They can be a one-man band, plumber. They could be a sort of 16 to sort of 30 gang doing big construction sites. And every single time we got talking to these companies, we thought to ourselves, well, that's interesting. They're terrible at payments. You know, they don't. I've had work done at my house. I'm sure you have as well.
Yes.
And the whole payment piece is really tricky. So we tried to, we built a minimum viable product. We tried to figure it all out. And we realised, I think within about day 2, that actually these companies don't have a problem with payments at all. Our complete hypothesis was incorrect. You know, they get paid, and when they're, you know, I'll be very stereotypical, but when you're sort of 6 foot square, you really, really pay some of these companies. But the problem they have is all the stuff that goes into the payment. So raising an invoice, creating a quote, all the administration. So we then built that. And that was much more successful, sort of all the admin piece into it. And that was rolling into about 2013. That's when I first met you.
Right, that's when we met at the Next Web.
That's right.
Yeah, you were
right.
selected as one of 20 companies to pitch at the Next Web, and I was coaching all 20 companies.
Yeah, that was a crazy experience. I mean, I'll never forget, because we built
in Amsterdam.
I built this wonderful, amazing pitch deck, and I distilled it down to whatever it was, the 5 minutes you're allowed to talk about on the stage. Came and saw you, and you broke my heart. You know, I thought I was the super entrepreneur that had it all sorted out. And so it's a bit like the army with you, Beth. You broke us down into our base components and then built us back up again. And actually, you know what? That was excellent. It was a really good experience. Although I was crying into my beer that evening in Amsterdam.
Yeah, yes, that's a common occurrence.
Is it?
Like,
Yeah.
Initially, and then they don't like me initially, and then they love me afterwards. So
Right, Sergeant Major. Absolutely. So we launched. We in fact launched on stage actually at the Next Web, and I'll be honest, that product was held together with sticky tape, bits of plastic, blue tack, all sorts of things, and we won Best Mobile App at that event.
I remember.
Yeah.
I was really happy for you.
Well, we're a B2B, product, and this is a sexy conference full of nice consumer tech. You know, nobody really likes to think about how their plumber deals with their admin. But so it's a kind of, I want this to be the most successful, boring company you've ever heard about. So that was great, and that got us lots of press attention. And I think at that time there were probably 4 of us in the business, so the 3 founders, and we had 1 extra guy. And then it really kind of snowballed from there. So we started getting lots of registrations coming in, lots of feedback from our early users, some pretty brutal, some pretty good. We kind of tried to understand what we should take from that. And the company just kind of took off. So we did 2 rounds of Crowdcube funding. That's a crowdfunding company based in the UK. We raised about £2 million from that.
It's great. Yep.
Yeah.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah, I think at the time we were one of the more successful B2B crowdfunded apps, but we had our angels as well with us. And then we raised a Series A, crikey, nearly 2 years ago now. So
And what happened just before you raised the money?
well, I can see you, Beth. Yeah, I can see you. So yeah, we had a nice holiday in Spain where we went through that whole process again of being broken down.
That's right.
And building us back up.
Yeah.
But I think the interesting thing with the business, it changed significantly from those early days at the Next Web all the way to coming to see you again just before our Series A, where we felt we knew the answers, and we probably did know the answers for a certain segment of our market. But this is a market which is so uncomputerized, and if they've bought something before, it's been some clunky accountancy system or something somebody's told them to buy. But the market, was early, so we were continuously educating, telling them why they should be using something like Powered Now. But actually, in the period of time from launching to coming to see you, actually the market started coming towards us a bit, and suddenly, computerization wasn't so alien.
Right.
So we were learning what it is that they really needed, but also we were going up market as well. So we're still very interested in the entry level market. That's our bread and butter, but we're moving to sort of again groups of 20, groups of 30 employees, and their requirements are completely different.
Right.
And
so that's where you are now. Is that where you are now?
well, that's kind
That's
of that was our turning point really
A couple years
around
ago.
raising the money.
Yeah.
And the money has enabled us to really scale the business.
And
So
you raised $2 million, right?
yeah, 2.35 or something.
2 days after we worked together.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
I remember.
yeah. It was that was a weird roller coaster. Actually, to be honest, I mean, the whole fundraising circle is something which I think you either hate it or really hate it.
Yes.
I'm yet to find many entrepreneurs or startups that really love going out to raise money.
I know.
But it was a good experience, and to close the round just before Christmas as well, which was
Christmas present.
Yeah, it was a Christmas present, especially for the staff, because getting up to that point of raising the Series A, I think we had about sort of 12, 13 people working in the business.
Right.
That gave us a nice runway for 2 years.
Right.
Really sort of accelerated our growth. We then went on to do the thing we really wanted to do, which was actually scale our commercial side, because up to that point, it's all about building product.
Right.
We know there's a demand for something, but actually we're a B2B service company, and you've got to have a product to sell into it. So you've got to build that to start with.
Right.
And that's a continuously evolving thing, really. And after that, it's all been about scaling the commercial side of the business.
And so tell me a little bit more about scaling the commercial side of the business. What does that entail, and to whom, more specifically?
Okay, I think that's a great question. If you'd asked me that when we first, in fact, if I dig out my pitch deck from the Next Web, I'd probably be incredibly embarrassed about my, I guess, naivety around how to actually get this product in front of people and get them to buy it. I'll be honest about it, but I think for very small businesses, it's all about self-service. We're a low-cost product to those companies. As soon as it involves a human, we can't afford to do it. It costs a lot of money. Now, of course, when you've got 100, 200,000 paying customers like that, you can just kind of roll with that, I suppose. It's the early days. But as you start scaling and you're getting bigger and bigger, and our ambition is to dominate this market, actually you've got to understand how you can both get to those people in a cost-effective way, but really get to the people that have the money. And the people that have the money in this market are the slightly bigger firms.
So what's slightly bigger? What's your definition of slightly bigger?
Well, for us, it's 5 to 20. Anybody that has 5 to 20 employees, suddenly they're probably VAT registered, so they're paying taxes. They have all of the headaches of running a business, difficult clients, projects which overrun. When you're a single person outfit, you can kind of deal with that yourself. You are the product.
Right.
As soon as you have staff, it gets really quite complicated, actually.
Right.
And the construction space is highly regulated. It's getting worse or better, depending on your viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of interesting things coming in for tax.
So when we were working together. I remember when you came to Spain to see me. I remember I was shocked and sort of horrified about the number of different forms and taxes
Yeah.
that a small businessman. Small, if you have 5 employees, you're small, but you have this huge burden. So give me some of the numbers of the types of numbers of forms these poor people have to deal with in order to just process their invoices and pay their taxes.
Yeah, sure. So
And their buy their insurances.
yeah, and it really depends on the type of job they're doing as well. So if you, I'll take an example. We have a customer who's an HVAC guy, heating, air conditioning, and he's on his own. So he's a one-man band. So in many ways, that's the simplest form of customer that we have using our product. But they have all sorts of things. So to do their job, they've got to fill in a whole load of forms. So everyone that has a rental property with a gas attached appliance in the UK needs a gas safety certificate that has to be done every single year. You know, we're in a nice TV studio that has air conditioning. Well, this would have to be serviced every single year for all sorts of things. Legionella disease. There's all of these various regulatory things which they have to do as part of their job. But then moving forward, you have, they have their own certification they have to keep up to date. If they have staff, then they've got to make sure their staff are up to date as well. There's this wonderful taxation rule for B2B contractors in the UK called CIS, which actually, having interviewed countless accountants, they really don't know anything about it either. Everyone has an opinion, and they're probably 80% right.
And what is CIS?
So CIS is...
I remember you mentioned it. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's about stamping out the black market, because most people think of this space as being, a bit dodgy, cash in hand, brown envelopes.
Under the table.
Under the table. And there is absolutely a little bit of that, and that's in the sort of the very small side of the business. But if you get a bit larger and you have staff, you can't afford to do that.
No.
And the government have brought in this taxation rule, which basically means that if you're employing somebody who is a one-man contractor or a two-man contractor, you have to do the taxation for them. And it's horribly complicated. So there's all these levels of confusion in it.
If you have 18 different subcontractors working for you, you have to do their 18 different tax.
Yes, so you would bill me.
Yeah.
And as you bill me, I would ask to see your CIS number.
Right.
I look at that, you're CIS registered, which is good news, because I then deduct 20% of what I'm going to pay you, and I pay the government.
Okay.
If you don't tell me your CIS number, that's bad news, because then I deduct 30%, and then we both get investigated. So,
oh my God. So I remember it was extremely complex. So that's just one little area. So
Yeah.
your software sort of accommodates or keeps track of all of it for them.
yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're trying to do as much as we possibly can. And I think the difficult thing for us is we've got to focus on the niches in this big sector, which we get the most users and we get the most benefit, give the most benefit to our users. Because, I can guarantee there's a form for something, for some, something down the road, which I've probably never even heard of. Yeah. So our goal is to computerize, I guess, the biggest 80% of this market and to give the biggest value to it in an easy to use package. Because if it's not easy to use, our biggest, and I'm going to talk about competition, but one of our biggest sort of bits of competition is a pen and a piece of paper.
Right, they're still using that.
Right? Absolutely. So we have to make it completely easy and simple for them to do that.
Right. And so how much time do you think you're saving your clients and by buying your software?
Oh, well, we have all sorts of quotes. Some I feel a bit far-fetched, if I'm honest, but we I think if you're a one-man band, we're probably saving somewhere in the order of 4 hours a week, for doing the admin, which is probably half a working day.
That's
so
right.
You can go and do something. If you're a larger company and you have staff, then, we have all sorts of quotes, some 20 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours worth of extra time, which these companies can either do more work, or we tend to find out some of them actually have a day off, which is pretty rare in this market.
Right. So where for what you're doing now, what's sort of your vision for where you want to go? What you've got 5. You're looking at sort of this smaller companies that have 5 to 20 people. So so it's just about tapping into more and more 5 to 20 people's companies here in the UK. Do you want to go to other countries? What are you looking at?
Okay, so great question. So we're focused on the UK. This is where we are. In fact, 80% of all of our paying customers are in the UK, which actually means we have 20% of paying customers who are overseas. The States is quite big for us. Australia, South Africa is quite big for us. But we want to win and dominate our home market first. This is the market we understand. We have easy access to it. So that is our focus today. What is our goal? Well, our goal is to computerize all of the things that these companies have to do. I'm a real firm believer that this is the last great uncomputerized sector, probably in the world, actually, if I'm honest. We compete with apathy, not necessarily other products, although there are lots of other products in this space.
Right.
So our goal is to computerize all the things that they do. We want to make it easy, and if I'm selling to a one-man band, actually what I want to do is enable him to enjoy what he's doing. He's or she did not go into that market to do admin, and that's what I hear all the time. So, and what they decide to do with that free time is completely up to them. So for the larger ones, it's all about scaling their businesses.
Yeah. So how do they hear about you?
Well, interesting. This market's very incestuous, if I'm honest. So
everybody knows everybody.
Everybody knows everybody. And you gave the example of if you had 18 contractors working for a main contractor. Well, that's absolutely the truth. So you'd be amazed. There are some huge construction companies out there which have very little assets, very few full-time employees working for them. They tend to all be employing subcontractors and
part-time.
And then it's like a big pyramid. These part-time subcontractors will subcontract something else out, who will subcontract something else out. So that CIS thing I mentioned, that gets really confusing. Up and down the pyramid. So we get a lot of recommendation. So we get lots of people talking about us.
Right.
And if we can get in with the main contractor, then we can sort of specify Powered Now to their subcontractors.
Right.
So that's one side. The other side is digital marketing, which is obviously big for us.
Yeah. So when I met you, I think your company and your story in terms of what you're doing, et cetera, was one of the most, even though it's not super, super high tech, right?
Yep.
It should sound simple. It's one of the most complex to sort of explain to people. They sort of don't really understand. I mean, you think they should understand, but it was really difficult to explain to them what you could do for people and how you could handle it.
Yeah.
And the key thing for you was to educate people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so do you think you've reached a tipping point in educating the home market so that they actually understand the youth? You said, it's come a long way since 2013 when we met.
Yeah.
No, that's 2018 now. So it's like
crazy, huh?
I know. It's amazing. So have you reached a tipping point that allows things to sort of flow downhill more easily in terms of people just saying, "Oh yes, I need that. I know that." If it's a small community, you'll be able to sort of scale it. Like when do you think you'll be able to saturate your market in the UK?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are two huge things in our favour. The first one is, back in 2010 when we did the research, we were dialing people up. We were asking them, would you use a system to do this? And maybe 1 in 10 would say yes. The reason being is, it's a bit old school. Lots of people who, they're stuck in their ways. They don't necessarily want to change. Well, of course, every single year, a whole bunch of people retire and a whole bunch of new people come into the market.
Who are what age?
Well, people that buy our software typically are 25 plus. People younger than that don't really start their own companies.
Yeah.
They might be working for somebody.
Yeah.
But, I've just turned 40. And could I possibly imagine using paper and pen? I work in technology, so maybe I'm slightly different. But, crazy. My co-founder, Chris, he's the...
I know Chris.
Yeah, he's the silver helmet of the trio that founded Powered Now. He's in his early 60s.
Yeah.
And he has friends that would refuse to use email up to about 3 or 4 years ago. So
in the construction industry.
No, anywhere.
Really? Oh.
So it's amazing how long it sometimes takes for technology change to sort of embed itself into people. And really that's happening quite quickly now, I think. And so
it's speeding up.
It's speeding up. And especially in construction, and younger people who are coming through, they're used to using their mobile phones or their tablets, and the idea of getting a laptop out is almost, that's almost old technology suddenly for these, especially for mobile-based people.
Right.
So the market is coming to us, so the expectations are coming to us. So that's the first thing. And I think the second thing that would help I like your analogy of things going downhill a bit quicker, is that horrible R word, that regulation point. We've had some terrible things that have happened in the UK. So you have Grenfell Tower.
Yeah.
There's always this funny saying that red tape is bad, but actually people are beginning to understand that
it's necessary.
It's necessary. They have to be accountable for what it is they do. And we have that CIS thing I mentioned, but there's a new thing coming for the government as well called Making Tax Digital. So if you're a VAT registered company, you have to do your own quarterly VAT reports. And trust me, for this market, that is going to be mind-blowing to them. They tend to rely on their accountants and bookkeepers. I probably shouldn't say this on the video podcast, but probably a little bit far too much,
yes.
if I'm honest. They kind of rely on them to do all their admin. But actually, if we can take some of that burden with our software away,
right,
they can save some money and do things a bit easier as well.
Right, there's a huge sort of unmet need out there.
There is. So the market is absolutely coming to us.
Yeah.
Quite quickly, actually.
Right, and I've seen that also with my move from Silicon Valley to Europe 6.5 years ago, because when I first got to Amsterdam for 4 years and then 2.5 years in Spain now, there were like hardly any private accelerators, private incubators. There were 4 in 4 different universities in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. But now it's just this explosion of accelerators, incubators, the people sort of talking, connecting with industry and technology and centralizing the information. So the whole thing is speeding up across the board, across Europe. So it doesn't surprise me that in your area, which is has been lagging behind, that they also would be speeding up.
Yeah.
They might not be speeding up as fast as some of the other technology areas, but they're still speeding up.
They are, and I also think that it's quite trendy, isn't it, as well? There's lots of kind of, especially in our space, there's lots of very old, traditional, very large companies who have always done something the way that they've always done it. So if you take the suppliers, the merchandisers who actually get product from a factory onto a building site, that's been the same process for years and years and years.
Right.
And they're suddenly seeing technology and the things that are happening in construction technology especially as a way to both, really, if we're honest, it's to speed up the whole thing, streamline it, and of course make better profits in the process.
Costs, right.
So these companies are all spinning up their own accelerators, and they're bringing on, products which we would have been laughed out of the room 5 years ago if we suggested, drone delivery to sites. I mean, come on.
Right.
That's actually happening. There's a large construction firm who are spending a lot of time looking at this. And it still feels like it's a bit too far out from today, but it's crazy how it's sped up.
Yeah. No, but drone delivery, drones are used for deliver all sorts of things currently all over the world. Medicine, everything. So that it's not that far out,
No, but I think maybe a sort of, 30-foot steel girder.
That's true.
might take a bit of time and effort.
I'm thinking of drones delivering medicine with this little tiny thing. That's true.
Yeah. But it was interesting, I got in a cab to come and see you today. And I'm awfully sorry I was a few minutes late.
No,
but the reason I was late is because I was stuck behind a load of construction traffic.
Yeah.
And it's trucks in central, cities. It's the way that these companies can leverage AI, routing. Right. There's all sorts of interesting things which actually they're all waking up to in the construction area now.
Right.
Because it's there for them. They can actually do something with it.
Right. Right. You had mentioned earlier that. You had an idea before the next web. You had a pitch deck prepared, and you thought, "Oh, this was perfect." Then we worked together, and you thought, "Okay, no," and it sort of broke you down, and then et cetera. But could you? And then you came 3 years later, I think it was. Yeah, 3 years later, just before you had to pitch for your Series A money for the $2 million. And I just would be interested to understand what in those. In the process of my approach, what did you use or learn that allowed you to transform what you were doing?
Okay. Well, somebody once told me that when you start your own business, you've either got to be mad or totally self-assured with yourself, if I'm honest. And I'm yet to find many introverted entrepreneurs, if that makes sense. We all think we know exactly what it is that we've got to do, and we've all read the various books, the lean startup, one way all the way to the 4-hour work week. You kind of get all these this input, and actually one of those inputs was, actually obviously going to see you, but going to conferences myself. And this is before I was even thinking about starting a business or raising money. You're just getting, I guess, all these sources telling you how you should do it. And it's actually incredibly confusing.
Right.
So the first thing I did before I came to see you is I Googled pitch deck. And 4 million results, or probably more, came back. And you look at the first one and you think, oh, that's easy. And you build something really quickly. And then you look at the second one and think, oh, well, that's completely wrong, my first one. So you kind of go around in these loops. And I think there's a whole lot of confusing advice. And I think the thing that really helped, the reason why we came back to see you, Beth, if I'm honest, is we rocked up in Amsterdam, bold and brash. We're ready to rock, raise lots of money. I've always spoken about how you broke it down and built it back up again. But I think depending on where you are, where your stage of the business, what people want to see in these pitches, or if you're asking for money or whatever it is you're doing, they want to relate it back to something which actually they've had their own experience with. So, and that was one of the, I guess, the hardest things about pitching and raising money, because we're doing something which is old-fashioned and weird and B2B, and that's fine, but they'll all have an experience with that. So trying to tailor that pitch to the person you're pitching it to, and it's certainly there's no one size fits all. I'll give you a good example. We went to see a very large VC firm here in London, and they had an opinion on the trade and construction space, which was well, I don't want to call a VC naive, but they were quite naive actually, because they've had no experience of it. So our pitch to them was all about education. This is what the market's doing, this is where it's going, and this is how we're going to change it. And that doesn't necessarily fit into your classic, pitch deck process, team, mission, values, revenue, market fit, all that kind of stuff.
You couldn't get to that conversation yet because you had to lay the groundwork, so they were in your conversation first, educated enough to understand what you were discussing, basically.
Yes, absolutely. And that was a challenge because, especially when you live and breathe the business, because you just assume that everybody knows what it is that you're doing and why there's such an opportunity.
Right. And remember what I say about the word assume?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It makes an ass of you and me.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And trust me, I've made an ass in front I'm probably doing it now in this picture, but I've done it in lots of important meetings with important people trying to explain what Power Now is.
Yes.
So trying to gauge where somebody is in that journey within the first sort of 30 seconds of meeting them when you're going to pitch, I think is the most critical thing anybody that's pitching can do, because you have to be agile and be able to change tack very, very quickly. I think that was my first example of a VC firm. We saw another firm here in London, and they kind of don't care. They know they've got a whole bunch of bets. They're going to make some bets. They want to make a bet in B2B. They know that construction tech, or con-tech as the new term is hot. They want to do something there. They don't want to be educated in the market. These guys are only interested in one thing, and that's the metrics. They want to know, what's it going to cost to fill this car? How many miles to the gallon are you going to get? Are we going to get to our destination? And then when we get there, is there a big party, or are we going to
when are we going to get there?
Exactly. So metrics-driven approach to pitching, again, I think that's something which you only get when, well, actually, for an early stage company, you only get when you've got some metrics to actually show off about.
Right.
And that's a very different thing as well. And so, having, we all talk about pitch decks, which should be a certain size and a certain number of slides, but you've kind of, in my opinion, you've got to have everything prepared. You've almost got to have this 100 slides, or not necessarily slides, but in your head,
right,
so you can quickly pivot to where they need to be, because the time whilst you're pitching is so precious. You have really one opportunity to,
right.
These companies see so many people through the doors, and it's never been easier or faster to get a company like Powered Now off the ground, actually. So bright young things, much younger than I am these days,
right.
They're all coming through the door. So you have to be able to gauge where they are and their journey,
right,
and then present the information you have.
Right. So that's one of the key things that I tell all my clients, is that you have to understand who you're talking to.
Yes.
And then you have to adapt and tailor, fine-tune your message based on what their motivation is.
Yes.
And you have to understand them, understand their motivations. Then you have to tailor what you're saying. So this 100 slide deck in your head, basically, when we worked together, I gave you 10 to 13 sort of slide deck, which is like an outline you have in your head about what to say, what not to say, and how to say it.
Yes.
So quickly so that they get it, right? But behind that is your sort of 20, 35 slide deck that gives you all of the detail, but you have to understand, how to kill your darlings, right?
Yeah.
You have to be ruthless in killing the things that you do not need to say, that they don't care about, and understand then how to deliver it so that it's in your unique voice, right? So that they get the sort of passion and sort of the compelling sort of urgency of what it is the value of what you're creating, so that they can say, yes, I want to talk to you, I want to give you money, I want to, this sounds like something we really can get behind.
Yeah.
And all of that, understanding the lens of which you need to convey the value of what you're doing, that lens of who you're talking to, what to say, what not to say, and how to say it, is something that many people are just lost in. That's my experience.
I like the lens, and actually, that's really good, actually. And that's a real struggle, I think, I think that's hard for anybody. Trying to, if you're that seasoned and you can figure that out, you've probably got it all sussed.
Exactly.
None of us have got all this stuff sussed. And I think that's the challenge. And it's weird looking back on the various things we've done. Now, I'm sure I'm going to have to be pitching again for money. We have a plan to actually get to break even and into huge profitability. But, the market might change. We might decide to do something. There might be an opportunity somewhere else within the business. So we might want to think about that again.
Right.
We can't ever rule anything out in this world. So trying to stay fresh and understand how to distill that lens, as it were, I think that's very, very hard.
Yes.
And I think startup founders, especially first-time startup founders, massively underestimate the amount of just time, effort, and knowledge it takes to get to that point. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
That's been my experience about the massive underestimating, because I've coached over 2,000 companies since I moved to Europe 6.5 years ago, across all technologies. So
Right.
it's, clean tech, med tech, biotech, fintech, ag tech, food tech, everything. Now contech, did you say?
Yeah.
And there's a lack of awareness about how much time and effort it takes to articulate quickly and clearly the value of what it is that you are offering to the world in your technology, service, or product, and the amount of time it takes to do that and then practice it so that you can actually get up and deliver it in the way that you did, which is basically as if it's in your autonomic involuntary nervous system, just like breathing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I remember when we worked together in Spain, we worked for a couple of days, and with you and with Chris, your CFO. And then you went to talk to the investor. You had the meeting set up 2 days later. And then you said, we put together the deck. We didn't actually go through the deck, but you were able to have a conversation with that lens, you said to me. And you didn't use the word lens, maybe, but that lens in your framework in your mind, so that when you talked to him, you knew exactly what to say when, and you could tell your stories, and you understood what not to say as well as what to say.
Yeah.
As a member, you were talking to me about that.
It's the confidence. It gives you that inner confidence. Actually, I can answer that. Or if I can't answer it, I know how to deal with it.
Right.
And I think you only get that when you're really, either you've been through it or you're spending the time focusing on it.
Yeah, that's the time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And this is what you said about, who likes to pitch, basically to ask for money. But the better you get at it, I think the more it's easier. And you don't take the rejections as personally. No, because
that's true.
You need to.
That's very true.
You need to go to the next. Okay, not the right one. Next, and you'll understand. It's like for you, you were talking to this investor 2 days later who was the right person, right?
Yes.
And you helped him to understand that you were the magnet that he needed to sort of get attracted to.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it could have gone a different way if you'd gone maybe before, because if it's too amorphous, if the message isn't clear, and the value of it's not clear, then you don't develop that magnetism that's necessary. You need to have the magnetism in order to attract the right investor, and because you don't want anybody.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we were lucky in many ways that actually when we made our pitch, it was the right person at the right time. But we probably had. I've probably been to 100 different pitch meetings before this, so, and out of those, we did the whole Crowdcube thing, but actually you have to bring angels with you. And when you've got vaporware, you've got no products, no metrics, no money, no traction, no hockey stick, none of that stuff. it's all about selling the vision and what's possible.
Right.
And some people are there, some people understand that, some people are not. But, you've got to grab what you can get.
Right.
And I think the rejection point is really interesting, because when I first started doing this and first started the whole pitching thing, I'm going to be rejected, it's going to be fine, don't worry about it, Ben, you're a big boy, you can deal with that. Yeah, forget that.
It's devastating.
Yeah, it is devastating.
I know.
Because you do your research, and I want to come and see, I want to see Beth VC because she's invested in 6 other contact businesses, she understands what we're doing, we've got a connection, maybe we've met before and we've got on well. And you go in, but you don't know the backstory.
Right.
You have no idea. Maybe you've invested in 6 contact businesses and they've all tanked, so therefore you don't want to touch with contact. Maybe you've got one you're thinking about investing in, and you're using our meeting as research
to learn more about.
to
That's
learn
exactly
more.
right. That's a lot.
Yeah. And that happened with a really, really large VC firm based here. I know that's what they were doing before we walked into the meeting. Yeah. But that's fine. Just suck it up and use the experience.
Going.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you just have to say next. Like, okay, that didn't work. Next. But you have to. It's like what I call deliberate practice. It's there's this saying about practice makes perfect, and it isn't true actually if you aren't clear about, if you don't have the right tools and you understand clearly what to say, what not to say, and then how to deliver it. If you practice without the right tools and without the right message delivered in the right way, it just basically ingrains bad habits, and you don't have success. And so it is about deliberate practice, which is about understanding what to say, what not to say, and how to say it, having the tools, having the practice to be able to show up. And then every time it doesn't work out, you're clear as much as possible why it didn't work.
Exactly.
That's the thing. If you can debrief and find out, that'd be great. But it's understanding just what you said afterwards. And sometimes you can find out ahead of time, like you walked in ahead of time, you knew they already had a competitor, right? So they weren't actually, they were just trying to benchmark research, right? So if you walk in, you have your expectations set correctly. And sometimes you're surprised positively, pleasantly, because you have something good happen. But then if it doesn't happen, you just go on to the next one. And then you end up having the right, you had the right meeting with the right investor at the right time, with the right practice 2 days before. Everything came together.
It was perfect. I mean, that was perfect. But it's funny, you really hit on something which is, I think, really interesting. That remember at the beginning I said I Googled how to do a pitch deck and you get all those results? Actually, most of these things, the top results are, see the pitch deck which raised insert company, Dropbox, whatever, 5 gazillion pounds.
Right, I know.
And you look at it and it's like 5 slides. And
I know,
this, that,
nothing on it, I know.
And like, oh, wow, that's what we've got to do then. But it's the context. What was the context?
And the stories you told, that's right, the person, how they delivered it, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's the learning which you have when you've done this a few times. But
well, that's wonderful. So thank you so much, Ben.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been lovely having you come up and seeing you coming up from the Isle of Wight. It's like to London. That's great.
Yeah. I've got my passport and I'm going to get some duty free on the way out. I think so. I wish.
So thank you very, very much. It's been great.
My pleasure, Beth. Thank you.